On tonight's episode, we got hoops and batters. We're going to talk about some basketball and we're going to talk about some baseball. Well, they're going to talk about some baseball. I'm going to listen and stew silently. I'm sure that's going to come back and haunt me later. In the meantime, who all's on tonight's episode? Well, we got Drewski here for baseball talk. We got Lexi in the booth. Silex is here. Bunt made it. And it's me, Red the Ram. Red the Ram. I could do this. I promise. I have totally not been stressing out about this whole thing the last 20 minutes. We could totally do this. It'll be fine. Welcome, everybody, to the Jersey Tales, the mascot's take on sports, or at least something similar to that. Okay, so up first, we've got the Final Four that nobody in the world could possibly predict, unless you just put all the number ones in the Final Four.
Literally, this never happens.
Never.
The one seeds never make it this far, but they finally did.
Yeah, we're so proud of them. Way to go. You've had such a hard road to get here.
Second time in NCAA history that this has happened. The first since 2008.
They just did it to make me look wrong. That's all. That's the only reason why they're there.
Well, I mean, my bracket's still running somewhat strong. If we're talking about grading, percentage-wise, I'd still be passing, but barely.
Percentage-wise, mine imploded the moment that some of my big timers went. But I do have 25% of the teams in the Final Four. So hey,
nice.
That percentage is going to be looking like the math finals that you took in high school.
Based off what industry I went into, my finals in high school were quite good in math.
Imagine being the one bold enough to pick all 4 number 1 seeds to make it to the Final Four. I mean, who could have seen that coming?
I actually did that with my bracket. I was like, what if? What if? I know it was boring, but what if?
It's only like what, the second or third time that's ever happened?
Yeah, and it's not like we didn't have some drama on the way there. The Kevin Willard situation in Maryland, pretty sure that cost them the game. So if you don't know, I believe it was Villanova has been courting Kevin Willard to come coach basketball for them while they're still in the tournament.
And then he had the audacity, Kevin Willard, to play dumb during the pre-game the interview that took place before the game, and then the exit interview after the game. Still played dumb, saying, quote, "I don't know what I'm doing." This is just a slap in the face of all Terps fans who just had our hearts ripped out at the hands of the University of Florida. And for him to just not be able to focus on the game because it was so obvious to anyone. Ray Charles could have seen that he was leaving for Villanova. It was so obvious. I'd have more respect if he just was open about it from the beginning.
He missed the team dinner. Like, he didn't show up to the team dinner before the game. And that's the part that it's like, all right, there's only one reason why you're ducking out on the team dinner. And you're kind of being a Bobby Petrino. I mean, it's like it was Bobby when he left Louisville the first time, like just left a sticky note on his desk.
Isn't that how he left Atlanta too? I feel like when he went to take the Arkansas job, it's like he barely told his team in advance, and he was just out the door.
He didn't tell his team at all, because that was the big complaint, is that he kind of sticky noted, I think, his way out of Louisville, and then got some flack for that, and so just didn't from the Falcons. Now, I mean, to be fair with him, he kind of got screwed because he was counting on Michael Vick being available to run some schemes, which
yeah.
and he just did not do well with what he had left. And as we saw when he was, the second time through in Louisville, because we don't learn our lesson. Can't wait for Patino to show up and like, hey, yeah, sure, we'll have Patino back too. Hook him up to a ventilator and I mean, at least somebody there on the sidelines holding an IV for him. But it'll be an Adidas IV though, so you have that going for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, his second time through, I mean, he turned. He did help develop Lamar Jackson to Lamar Jackson. So I think he would have done well with Vic, but he didn't have it. Not to talk about football right now, but it's it's kind of hand in hand.
I mean, if his mind and heart wasn't in it, he should have just stepped aside. It's like how you have in college football, where you'll have these coaches who take a job somewhere else, and you have the interim coach in the bowl game. I mean, I'd have more respect for him if he did that rather than attempt to coach this game against Florida, because it was clear that his mind and attention was not there. The team looked off from the first tip-off. So,
well, yeah, it's all the rumors because like they hear all that stuff. The moment that the rumors start coming out and swirling, because they actually, again, we're back to Petrino again. Before he left us for the Falcons, LSU leaked it out in the media during the halftime of our bowl game, or either during the halftime of our bowl game or right before our bowl game, that he was leaving. And the other team found out about it and used it against us in the trenches. And our team guys, they had no idea. They were blindsided by that information. Of course, he didn't end up going to LSU. He stayed because I think we matched their offer. But yeah, I mean, that 100% is something that affects a team and their performance.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And it just gets worse for Maryland because Damon Evans, the longtime athletic director, he left for SMU. You got Willard out going to Villanova. You have the two players who are entering the transfer portal, and of course Queen's going to, if he's smart, he'll enter the NBA draft. He'll be a lottery pick. This team's going to look radically different next year. It's not going to be a good team, regardless of who comes in as head coach. So, this might have been Maryland's, best shot at a title for the foreseeable, or at least for the short term. But I just really hate how everything went down. He should have excused himself if his mind and heart wasn't in it, because you not only did the fan wrong, you did the kids wrong too, because those guys deserved, a shot at a legitimate shot at a national title. And if he's not all there, you deprive them of that,
Yeah, plus I was going to say plus, you've got the portal, but then no, you don't, because like we talked about last week, is the portal situation for college basketball is stupid because it's in the middle of a tournament. And so if you're a coach, you're trying to get to your next job, even if you are in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8.
Yep.
And if you're a player, you might be looking for your next payday instead of playing. And I mean, that's an ongoing problem. And now, if he would have won, how long is he going to be able to stay there? Because if he makes it all the way to the national championship, hypothetically speaking, and he jumps ship, he doesn't have much to work with in terms of portal time, because the only thing that's available to him is, I think, people that were in the tournament.
Yeah, pretty much.
You guys, on top of that, for you guys, because then you think about not only for his situation, but you think about for Maryland, they're going to go out and they're going to have to figure out which coach they're going to hire, they're going to bring in, and then they've only got a short window to build a new team. Because if you're all right, so if you're a bad team like Louisville was last year, we were bad, all right, and somehow we were even worse the year before, but we were able to hire our new coach, get him running, hit the portal, build a whole new team, got back to the dance in 1 year. We didn't even have our you need to have your rebuilding year. We skipped that. This is our rebuilding year. Knocked out of the first round of the tournament. That's what we consider a rebuilding year. You don't even get that because you guys were good. So you're now going to have to suffer through probably a bad year next year, which is again, it's stupid. Portal needs to scoot. Go ahead. Go a month after the after the championship. Just
it
stick
does.
it down there. It just makes sense.
Does. It absolutely does. If you're speaking truth to power there, they have to figure out the portal situation, because it's going to ruin. It's already ruined college football. It's going to ruin college basketball if it hasn't already. So they have to figure that out. But Maryland's going to conduct the national search for both head coaches and athletic directors. I think for these coaches, from what I've been hearing, the odds-on favorite is Buzz Williams, former Marquette coach. I think he was at Tech too, but he's the coach currently of A&M. Go figure, another A&M coach. We had Mark Turgeon, another A&M coach that we poached years ago. It didn't really work out for us. I mean, Buzz Williams, wherever he goes, his teams improve. I'm just not,
He just has a ceiling.
wowed. Yeah, I'm just not wowed by the pick, but it's the safest pick out there. And unless you want to go close to home and get the guy from Dwayne Simpkins from American or the GW coach, but Buzz is probably the safest pick,
Those safe picks is they usually don't pan out, and you can be a journeyman college basketball coach where you're making a buttload of money, and you haven't really done a lot other than be better than the guy before you. Now, some could say that Kevin Willard was kind of like that based off of the fan statements that I've been seeing that's been coming out because of all this nonsense that's been going on, which I thought was a bit ridiculous because the number of people that dog on Kevin Willard as a coach, I'm like, have you seen his record? Every place he's been a head coach at, because they've gone from terrible to respectable within about 3 to 4 years. I don't think he's ever had a year where he's regressed in terms of win to loss. Yeah, like it's like you look at him and like, so on paper, Kevin Willard is one of those coaches where if my coach or my team is in struggling and like we can't do well with the coach that we've got and we're terrible, that's the guy I want because he can literally take any team and make them better.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, he took a struggling Iona team from 12-20 his first year to 21-10 the last year he was there. He made Seton Hall relevant in men's college basketball. So, I mean, he leaves Maryland with a 27-9. Well, excuse me, he leaves Maryland with a 65-39 record overall. A trip to the Sweet 16. So you're not wrong. He's not a bad coach at all, not in the slightest. It's just I wish he would have approached this entire situation a lot more differently with tact and respect for this institution and the players involved. I think that's my biggest issue with everything.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like that's his biggest problem. But like the number of Terp fans that I've just been seeing that have just been like, "Oh, he was a terrible coach anyway. We didn't really want him," and I was like,
I mean, he was solid coach.
Just got to your first Sweet 16 in a decade. He's so terrible.
Yeah.
Like the only bad year we had was last year. We went 16-17, but the year prior we went 22-13, and we made it to the second round. He had a really good tenure here in Maryland. All of that sounds like just bitterness and some kind of coping. I don't know, but it's a revision of history. It's not like this was Mark Turgeon all over again. Like, Kevin Willard was a really good coach for us.
Yeah, I mean they're calling him Baby Patino. that's what everyone keeps
that just because he's from New York.
Well, he coached under Patino.
With the Celtics. Yep.
Well, and we had him at Louisville too. Like that's how much I know a ton about him because he was in our fishbowl, and Willard was one of those people. Just like Bellarmine's coach Scotty Davenport also coached at Patino at Louisville. Like at one point we had, I guess his most successful stint of assistant coaches. I mean, I guess you could argue Tubby maybe, but really it was Willard and Davenport under them. They just did really well. So yeah, I mean it was the fishbowl that is Louisville basketball. So everybody knew where they went to eat, what they were doing. It was all covered.
I think another thing that this just highlights is just how unimpressive and depressing and uninteresting this tournament has been. We've seen there's just chalk. It's just been totally chalk for the most part. I think the biggest upset was what McNeese State, and then they got bounced in the second round. Like it's
Yeah,
been a
one
fairly
hurt.
uninteresting tournament.
Yeah, and I mean, not even just that it was chalk. Like there's been a couple close games. I mean, Houston in the Elite Eight, but it just hasn't been any exciting games. You know, if it's gonna be chalk, at least have it come down to the wire, buzzer beater, tough basketball. We barely even gotten that. It's just not been a good tournament to watch.
Yeah, most of these teams that are left have literally just been dominant.
No, I mean I was just gonna continue my thought. It's just not been even if Michigan State did quote unquote upset Auburn, it wouldn't have been this big shocker. It was also not that close. I mean, they won by 6, so it's but all the other games, they won by 6. Florida won by 5, and then Duke and Houston both won by 20 each. No one wants to see that. No one wants to see not only just chalk, but blowouts by teams that were favored.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here looking at the Elite Eight was 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, and a 1-3. That's ridiculous.
So I think it further goes to what I was wanting to bring up. So I posted this image, and it's just a roster of each Sweet 16 team. And for the most part, minus a couple of teams like Purdue, and I assume that's Michigan State, there is a lot of turnover. Most of these players are probably not on the same team they started out with, and we can thank the NIL and the portal for this. So why I bring this up is, are we seeing sort of this switch now, where it's going to be common in the future, where we have this dominance, where college basketball, again, men's college basketball, becomes very top heavy, where all the best players from small conferences, mid majors, high majors, they're going to, Michigan, Duke, UNC. I feel like we're headed towards that, in large part because of the portal and the NIL money. And maybe we're going to see less Cinderella teams overall. Am I crazy for thinking that, or is this just a one-off kind of year, and it comes and it ebbs and flows, and who knows, next year we'll see more Cinderellas again?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to depend, I think. I mean, like Duke is also there being consistent. Houston, a little bit. It's hard to tell. Though what all this is doing is this is distracting from me talking about how terrible Buzz Williams is. Well, not really terrible. Is that the whole point that I was trying to get earlier is he's a journeyman for coaching. Like he'll come in, he'll get you respectable, and then he hits the ceiling. Now with the portal, just to kind of segue the two together, he hasn't really used it very well, but also hasn't had deep pockets to make use of it. He coaches the kind of basketball that gives people like Pitino fits, but he never really seems to get over that hump against those top tier coaches. And it's been said before, hey, once you start getting resources, you expect to see a little bit of improvement, right? So if you go from, I don't know, I don't even know, not a mid-major, but like a small-time school, and you go to a mid-major, well, they'll have more resources available to you than the small-time school. And so you're expected to do better than what you did at the small-time school. Buzz is one of those coaches where I think his sweet spot was Marquette. I think that's where he should have stayed. He should have got paid. and he should have just retired as their fantastic coach of Marquette.
Yeah,
And then he
because
starts.
that's
Yeah, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, the farthest he's been as a coach was the Elite Eight in 2012, 2013 with Marquette. That's how I first learned about Buzz Williams, was the Marquette Golden Eagles. But I've looking at his record, his years coaching and the records, and you're not wrong. It just seems like he stays there for like 6-7 years, and he just maxes out. Be it the Sweet 16 for Virginia Tech or the second round for Texas A&M, an SEC school that has a lot of resources. So you're not wrong in your assessment. He's a journeyman coach who just has a ceiling.
Exactly. I mean, like, all right, so Texas A&M, they should be able to just write a blank check and say, get me a Sweet 16 every year. But the amount of money that they've supposedly got, I mean, their fans will tell you that they're loaded. And they talk about it like they're God's gift to sports. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I would much rather see them target somebody not safe. I mean, that's what we did to get our turnaround. Because our first choice, when we tried to do that targeted turnaround, we got somebody who went to the national title or won a national title over in Xavier. I mean, that should have been, oh, well, hey, if he wins a title there, he should easily be able to win one here. And then Mac just could not make it happen for us. And then we saw, and then after that, the boosters got involved and a bunch of people. Previously, we had the Kenny Payne era, which was, and now the fire's back because Pat Kelsey, who like, no offense, doesn't come from the normal places where you look and you find a basketball coach. But he checks a lot of boxes. And, I don't want to be too, because we're still in the honeymoon phase. So, like, I may end up hating the guy in like 2 years. We don't know. But for this year, at least, we looked like a competent program most of the time. We didn't beat anybody we weren't supposed to beat outside of Indiana, and they have their own problems, and that's fine. But we didn't really lose to anyone else that we weren't supposed to lose to. So, he's doing exactly what the board says that we're supposed to do. Now, we're going to want more from him this year, right? Hey, you're going to have to get us to at least make it look like we might get to the Sweet 16. I want to get to the second round of the tournament, please. Also, there's a couple of games that we don't want you to lose going into next season. Still, like, we're only 27 games. I mean, it's hard to complain. And if you're looking at one team says like, hey, you know what? They're doing all right. That would be one that would be quite the candidate for the turnaround. And again, we just went to the portal and we bought a whole new team, which you can do now. You could just do that. That being said, go ahead.
Oh, real quick. Some of the coaches that are mentioned that are seen as candidates are Chris Collins from Northwestern, Mark Byington, Vanderbilt, who had an amazing year this season. Vanderbilt, 10th seed in the tournament. Chris Mack, who you just mentioned, College of Charleston head coach. This is a weird one. Sam Cassell, he's an assistant for the Boston Celtics, is there. Luke Murray from UConn. And who can forget? Oh, my God. Not Juan Dixon. Steve Blake. For those of you who are old enough to remember the 2002 Maryland Terrapins, Steve Blake was on that team as a player. So that's someone who's been, well, he offered up himself to be a coach of the team. So if Maryland really wants to say, screw it, we'll make a splash higher, Steve Blake might be the next coach of the Terps. So,
well, if I had to say which one on those lists that I think is the best choice, a Big Ten team hiring a Vanderbilt coach seems to go okay, because it's Vanderbilt, so they literally have the least amount of resources available of any of the SEC programs, and was able to get to the tournament. I'm sure Bunt is devastated that we can't have an SEC versus SEC national title game.
Nah, it's all good. Totally, I'm fine with that. Actually,
You still
100%.
think Auburn is gonna be the champ?
I'm going to be for real with you. Um, I'm gonna be bold, and I'm gonna say Auburn comes out on top. Still, I say they. I say that they're probably the least picked right now out of the four, but I'm still gonna go with my main pick. Well, my first pick when I made my first bracket, my first and only bracket when all the teams were in. Now is that wise seeing how Duke and Houston have been playing really good actually to still pick Auburn? Probably not, but I'm gonna be the bold pick and actually still choose Auburn to win it all
And
because
you don't have any statement on Florida then.
I just hate Florida. I just hate Florida, so I hope they lose.
I
But
just think
I mean,
Florida. Go
look,
ahead.
trust me. I mean, in the second chance bracket, I put them in one of them. But and they also probably have like the best chance of winning because they're hot. But I just don't like Florida, so I hope
I,
Auburn
I
still ends up taking it. And I don't even like
I
Auburn that much because Auburn's a rival to the Bulldogs, but um I they were my original pick, so I still say that they'll end up winning it.
I picked Duke in my bracket, and they're still in it, so I am gonna go with them.
Yeah, I've got Duke. That's the one team I've got left, and I have them winning the whole thing. So I don't feel bad about that choice. I could see Florida versus Duke being a problem. I don't see Auburn versus Duke being a problem. Though Duke and Houston, it's a fun matchup. But Duke's actually got to get past Houston in order to get there. So, I mean, I'm still, and trust me, as somebody from the state of Kentucky, we hate Duke as much as the rest of you, if not more.
Also, real quick, keep in mind that yeah, I know this is back in December, but Duke wasn't that far ahead in the game that they played against Auburn. So
Yes, but Duke
if
got better.
Duke did get better, but Auburn also did kind of lock in when the playoffs started because I mean, in the SEC tourney, they did not lock in. But then the NCAA tournament kind of came around. That's when they started like, "Oh, yeah, we got to play basketball." So, I don't know. It takes a lot to beat a team 2 times in a row, especially in basketball, unless if you're miles better than them. But I don't know. It'll be a good game, that's for sure. If they do end up beating.
Saw you're on point. Who you thinking?
Oh my gosh. Well, in one of my brackets, I had Auburn predicted to win it all. So I'm going to begrudgingly pick an SEC team and take Auburn to win the national title.
That is gross, and I'm very upset with you right now.
I know.
Lexi, who did you have?
I had Texas Tech over Georgia in the finals, so
Oh
both my
my!
teams are gone.
So who do you think now that you get to look at the four that are left?
I think it's gonna be Florida.
So,
Just the momentum they've had. I think it's gonna be Florida.
yeah, I mean it's a weird thing because like after watching all four of them play, like they've all played really good basketball for the most part, at least during the tournament. And so it's kind of it's hard because you're basically going, who is just 1% better, or who's 2% better than the other team? 'Cause
I
think
don't
that's what it's
even
going to come down.
I don't even think it's looking at like who's just better. I think it's gonna come down like, well, obviously who wants it more, but who's just gonna like who's gonna be the team to lock in more? Who's gonna be the team just to be like, I'm done, like I'm done fooling around. Like you're going down.
Yeah, I suppose that's the case. All right, it's time to talk about torpedoes.
Yay, the base of balls.
Torpedo bats.
My time to shine, baby.
All right,
Oh,
first
yeah.
off, though, we have controversy, and then you get to shine. Supposedly controversy. What's Lexi? What's the deal with these like torpedo bats?
The torpedo bats is a new invention on the bat that was started by the Yankees over the spring. Players like Anthony Volpe, Jazz Chisholm, Bellinger, and Paul Goldschmidt, when they hit their ball on the bat, it did not hit on their normal barrel. Their main point was near the logo, toward the lower part of the bat. So what the Yankees did with the hire of Aaron Leonhardt from the University of Michigan and an MIT alum, he works in their analytical department. He collaborated with the players to move the barrel lower into the bat, so the strength of the bat is lower, and you have more harder wood, so they make more contact with the ball. It's actually working already. Jazz Chisholm average ball speed was 71.8 last year. He's hit a high of 78 and has an average of 73 to 74 miles per hour on the bat. The Yankees have also hit 3 straight home runs. 9 have scored 20 runs in their first couple games. They've hit 15 home runs in their first 3 games. Other teams are now implementing this. Like the Braves have a catcher implementing this. This gets just announced. The Phillies have ordered some. The torpedo bats are completely legal. They meet every single standard of MLB bat. So it's no controversy. These are legal bats. They follow MLB rules. The Yankees, just with this help of the MIT professor, have just changed the way of the bat, and the bat hasn't been changed in a very, very long time.
So the question is, how long until they're banned?
The problem is they won't be banned. These are completely legal. They fit under every single standard of a bat and how the barrel, the size of the bat, the weight. These are completely legal, and now other teams are using this. This is not just one thing the Yankees can do and hold against the league. Every team can now order this, and teams are now lining up to order this because not every single player will need this. Not every single player needs the barrel lower on the bat. So this is something every team can order. It's Yandy Diaz, Caminero on the Rays are using it. Chicago Cubs used it during the spring training. They decided they didn't like it. The Braves have an order. They have a catcher named Drake Baldwin who used the bat in Arizona Fall League and said there are potential benefits to using the bat. The Yankees, with this new bat, have set a franchise record of home runs in a game. Note about this, Aaron Judge did have 4 home runs in that game. He does not use the bat. It's just that another thing for the accomplishment with the home runs, a lot of people think juice balls are back this year in the MLB. So this can be applied to juice balls and a new invention in the way of the bat.
Oh god, this is why I hate baseball.
Real quick about the
ahead.
Yankees, that's kind of why, like, I'm shocked. Out of every team that decided to use the torpedo bat, it was the Yankees, having the shortest field in baseball, and They they come out with the torpedo bats, but they have the shortest field of baseball. You telling me they can't hit a home run on a short field like that?
Oh no, see
So
what happens. It's what happens when you let the Yankees change, right? Like everyone was saying, like, hey, you know what? You ought to start adjusting your facial hair rules. They did that. Next thing you know, they show up with a torpedo bat. It's supposed to be illegal, but it's going to change the whole world of baseball.
Yeah, especially with MLB these days. Modern MLB aiming towards more of the I want to see a home run every pitch type thing, which that's not how it should be in my opinion.
so
But I guess with MLB focusing, or a lot of people crowd, I like home run. This is appealing to my eyes. Trying to find ways to make that happen more. So I guess the MLB likey the torpedo bats.
I mean, it's
So-
going to be one of those things, right? You're good, Lexi. The thing with there's going to be some changes, right? Now, is this going to become the next, like, it's the 3-point shot of the NBA? Maybe. But you're also saying, hey, oh no, it's perfectly legal. I mean, at the time, aluminum bats, I think they were at one point legal, and then they had to take them away because they got too many home runs out of it. So, it's going to be one of those things where, look, if they want to make a set of rule changes to keep the torpedo bats out, they absolutely will be able to do that, and it's not going to be a problem. Just because they're legal now doesn't mean they'll be eventually legal in the future.
Well, by them doing that, they smacked the Brewers 20-6 the other day.
So some of the players are also not liking the torpedo bat. Trevor Miguel of the Brewers said it's like equipment used in slow pitch softball, having a bigger bat.
All right. So like every time there's but like how many NFL players don't like the new helmets? There's always going to be like people that complain about something. Okay. Like that's not a defense mechanism for or against something. Now, granted, I think baseball needs to change. Now, my way of changing it is I want an entire defensive lineman squad on the exterior of the wall, and every time that there's a pop fly, they need to be charging the guy catching the ball out in the middle to make it more exciting. But that all being said, just
That sounds
because
like a
people,
nightmare.
oh, it would be glorious. Like, think about how beautiful that would be. Because I always hated, pop fly out to right field. Oh, it's caught. Pop fly out to left field. Oh, it's caught. Pop fly. Like, I don't care. You're going to catch it anyway. You weird freaks of nature. Like, stop it. I want something exciting to happen. I don't know.
Gonna have the outfielder fearing for his life.
I mean, we can put him in pads.
He's gonna have a sixth sense by the time he's gotten hit by 10 times going up for the ball.
It'd be beautiful. It'd be the best way to fix baseball. Otherwise, I'm going to be sitting here listening to like batting percentages for the next 4 hours. That all being said, Drewski, what's your take on the torpedo bat?
Well, I do not like the Yankees, so I was just looking for anything that any rule that this might break, but it is legal, and I think other teams are going to use them. It is legal now, but yeah, I can't guarantee that won't change. Regardless of if not every player is going to use it, but I just think it's dumb. I mean, if you can't hit the baseball, you can't hit the baseball. Moving the barrel down 3 inches, just it's the equivalent of putting it on a tee for a little leaguer. I don't know.
I mean, do you think it's going to get banned like aluminum bats?
I mean, I can't say with certainty that it will, but there's definitely a chance at least. Yeah, we'll see. When we get to mid-June and teams run production is doubled, it's going to be a very polarizing thing. And it was kind of the sticky stuff ban a couple of years ago, where pitchers were no longer allowed to use spider tack and other substances to get a better grip on the baseball. I think we're going to end up in a situation like that where, the league gave them their inch, they let them use the sticky stuff, but then when run production is way down, well, now you can't use it anymore. And, to the casual fan, yes, scoring more runs is exciting, but from what we've seen in the past, a monumental shift either way towards the offense or towards pitching usually has necessitated some sort of rule change. So I would not be surprised, whether it's this season, next season, that we end up seeing that rule change.
I mean, baseball is one of those sports that is struggling right now because I believe like ESPN even dumped them, right? They no longer picked up the baseball contract. There was some sort of ESPN contract, and they're like, "Yeah, no, we don't want it."
I believe the ESPN contract is up after this season. I mean, they're also as susceptible to the whole RSN dilemma as NBA and NHL teams are, so that's been a struggle. But I mean, I still think baseball is, at worst, it's right behind the NBA. Some could even argue at this point it's inching ahead because of how badly the NBA has stalled out. But I wouldn't say they're in a bad spot, but I don't think this is going to stick around just for the sake of quote unquote saving the game of baseball.
I mean, it depends, right? Because this could be your slam dunk, right? At one point, slam dunks weren't allowed in basketball, and then they innovated. And when was the last time you actually saw innovation? I mean, I know they're talking about doing like robotic umpires and that kind of stuff, taking the human element out of the part that actually makes the game fun.
I mean, if you've seen how bad some of these umps are, you'd understand that one. But
well, that's like a weak problem.
I don't necessarily. I mean, the almighty dollar will tell all. I mean, maybe Rob Manfred will just sit back and say, well, offense is going crazy right now, but so are our wallets, so we're going to leave it as is. It could be a gripe with the players union, pitchers complaining that, their numbers are getting worse because of these guys that are now all using it that normally would not be barreling up the ball and hitting doubles and hitting home runs. And that could be a gripe that they bring up. I don't know. But just because it's legal now doesn't mean it's going to be legal forever. So.
Yeah, I mean, that part's true. But, the other part is we've got a looming shutdown that's coming. There's a lockout.
I think the CBA still has another year or two. They just renewed it in 2022. So I think it's next year, the year after, it'll be up again.
And all signs point to a lockout with that, though. At least that's the way that everybody's talking.
We technically had a lockout last time, but it didn't affect the season at all. Everything was good to go by spring training. So, lockout isn't necessarily a death sentence.
Yeah, but it just seems like it happens every year with baseball, and I don't know. I mean, yes, it's good that the players have a voice and all that stuff. It's just there's a lot of this kind of noise that because it very well could be like an issue with the bat. That might be the thing that triggers the lockout this year. They either want it or they don't.
It could. I mean, that could be a polarizing topic.
But of course, it's all going to be about money anyway. But as far as the ESPN contract goes, though, ESPN saw significant revenue drop from the MLB contract, and they were the only one that went back and wanted to renegotiate for a lower price, even versus everything else that they cover. That was the one that they weren't willing to pay more money for because the revenue's not there on baseball. Now, it could be because there's too many games and it's oversaturated. The games don't matter as much, and so you don't have as many eyeballs on the screen at the same time. There's a couple of theories on that part, But baseball should not be a sport scared of innovating because they have got to figure out how to make this game more exciting.
I feel like the bigger issue with baseball is less so excitement. It's well, I think that's a big issue, but it's also spending. And that's probably what's going to be the biggest thing that drives this upcoming lockout is you have teams who are not spending as much as they should. You know, the usual suspects, the A's, the Pirates and what have you. I think that's a big issue that baseball needs to address with these upcoming CBA talks because if they don't, it's you're gonna get salaries that are just out of control. I mean,
Well, I mean that's true,
Where-
right, Drewski? Like, so do you want the A's to have to compete with New York, or do you want the Cleveland, whatever they're called now? I can't remember.
Guardians.
Guardians. The Guardians. Do you want the Guardians trying to compete in contracts with New York? Because that's right now the way that it's structured. The smaller teams aren't forced to pay more, so they're sitting back. They're enjoying a bit of a windfall in this. But if you say that you got to pay more, either you got to figure out a way to divvy up some of that New York money that just prints out. He's just got a machine that just prints out money up there. To these other markets too. I mean, that would also be part of it, right?
No, it's really not that simple. I mean, there are owners that, wealth-wise are on the same level as the Yankees, as the Dodgers, as the Mets, as the Red Sox. And, instead of investing the money that they're making back into their team, they choose to pocket it, and that's on them. The way to level the playing field is with a salary floor. Owners should have a minimum amount that they are required to spend on their team to avoid teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates, where you're basically looking at 100 losses every year, because owners just don't care. Giving out money from the Yankees to the small market teams like the Pirates and Reds, that's not going to benefit anything but the owners' pockets because they're not going to put that money back into the team.
You got to have a floor. I'm just disagreeing with you on the floor. My problem is they need to be forced to do closer to what the NFL has, where it's very tightly structured, where you can't overspend and you can't underspend. Now the players' union will never go for the anti-overspend part. I understand that, but something's got to be done. And just because the Yankees owner is on the same wealth level as the Cleveland Guardians, that part doesn't really come into play if the revenue for the team is significantly higher because people in New York love baseball so much and that they put the Yankee stuff on everything and it's all licensed to heck. And it turns out the team generates 3 times whatever they spend on players' salaries, versus Cleveland can't compete with that. He doesn't. If you're already starting at $1 billion on both players or both owners, but my product that I'm investing all this money in is still generating 6 times the amount of return as the other. Eventually, I'm going to be out of the game completely because not that I'm sympathizing with billionaires. Please just don't take it this way. But this is just the way that it works on a numbers game. Is that just because the two products seem the same on paper? It's like, oh yeah, you got $4 billion, or you got $2 billion, or whatever it is. If the team itself doesn't generate enough money to cover that cost differential, at least to make sense, then they're not going to invest all that money in it. Just from a financial perspective. Go ahead.
So, real quick, just so we're all clear here, you're also advocating for a salary cap in addition to some kind of salary floor? Or do you just
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And you believe a salary cap would instantly make it fair for all teams to compete with each other, not just say you have an upper echelon of teams like the Dodgers and Yankees and whoever who can just spin off the wazoo, and then other teams who can't.
Yeah, there absolutely should be a salary cap, and there should be a salary floor, and you shouldn't be able to spend more than that for your entire roster. Like not
Okay.
individual. I want the roster limit. And then if we've got to do something else to figure out how, the Yankees are sitting there raking in again, their merch, I guarantee you their merch profits every year are enough to fund some of these other teams. you know, it's kind of scary. You got to figure out how to divvy that up and make it an even playing field, because otherwise, I mean, this is a professional sports league. Everybody's supposed to be on the same playing level, but they're not, because you've got all that money in New York, and then you got, again, I'm going to use Cleveland again because I like beating up on Cleveland, but I mean, there's no money in Cleveland.
So you're not wrong. At the end of the day, there's never going to be a salary cap. The players' union is never going to agree to that. The last time that was a legitimate talking point in negotiations, the World Series got canceled. So people can keep bringing up it's not going to happen. But, to your point, yes, yeah, the Yankees, Dodgers, those teams are going to make more money. And sure, they're going to have more money to spend. But there are plenty of teams. For example, I'm looking at 2024 revenue versus payroll. The Oakland Athletics brought in $241 million. And yes, that was the absolute lowest in the league. But they also only put 34% of that to their payroll. Now, sure, regardless of how much they spend, they're not going to touch the Yankees. They're not going to touch the Dodgers in payroll. But, a team like the Arizona Diamondbacks that brought in $331 million and spent over $200 million on their payroll, a solid 2/3 of their revenue, they were competitive. They didn't make the playoffs, but they were a year removed from a World Series appearance, and they were competitive. So same thing with the Kansas City Royals. They had the third lowest revenue, but they had almost 60% of that revenue going to their payroll. They were, 2 wins away from going to the ALCS last year. They're, as far as small market teams go, they're also the most recent one to win a World Series. So, yes, the playing field is never going to be completely level between teams like the Yankees and Dodgers and teams like the Guardians, the Royals, and the Pirates. But it's still not an excuse for how little these owners seem to care about putting a winning product on the field. And, no salary cap is going to change that.
So since
Yeah.
we're doing numbers talks, do we know how much was it? What was the first team you said? The A's?
The Oakland A's had the lowest revenue in baseball, and they also had the second lowest. This article is referring to it as a quote unquote Scrooge index. The percentage of their revenue that went to payroll.
Right, but as we all know, revenue is not profit.
No,
So
it's not.
So the next question I
But-
have to ask is, what are their operating costs versus the number 2 team on that list, or the number 3 team on that list, or the number 4 team on this? Because also they're in California, which I imagine it's, if they're having to pay, rent for their stadium, or they own their stadium, that also might be part of the reason why they haven't put a bunch of money into it. Because
I mean, to counter that point, the Tampa Bay Rays were the lowest team in terms of the percentage of revenue that they put into their payroll. Florida is a very tax-friendly state. I can't imagine they're.
I wasn't going off of taxes. I was going off of land value.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but the same thing. Tampa Bay is going to be a lot cheaper than the Bay Area of California.
Well, they got to keep rebuilding after every hurricane.
Well, fair enough. But I mean, again, if you
Their
look, I mean,
stadium
even
insurance
the
is
smaller
ridiculous.
market teams that had lower revenues, teams like the Royals, like the Guardians, that put a significant percentage into their payroll, and it doesn't necessarily even just have to go towards solely paying the salary of players. there are teams, the Guardians, for example, consistently just churn out good pitching through their farm system. You can, even if you are not going to be able to pay the big free agents $200, $300 million contracts, you could still invest in your player development. You could still invest in analytics and, get, draft well and have those young players for the 5-6 years, however long before you trade them or they sign elsewhere, and maximize the amount that you can get out of that.
I mean, if I'm looking at this as an owner, why am I going to invest all this time and money training and drafting well, if all it does is mean that the Yankees every year are going to come in here and poach my talent?
Or I do want to mention this and play devil's advocate real quick. Just because a team goes out and spends X amount of money doesn't mean they're automatically going to be successful. Just ask Steve Cohen in the Mets, a few years ago, where he spent all that money and had nothing to show for it. It's not an automatic, oh, they spent billions of dollars, they're going to win the World Series. It's not a real 1-to-1 ratio. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But
it helps.
It does help. Luck also helps too. Not having injuries, devastating injuries, also helps too. But it does help. And I do think I used to be on the train of they need to have a salary cap. I'm not there anymore. But I do think a salary floor and some kind of penalty for them not meeting that it's necessary. The owners have to spend. A lot of these owners are rich. It's not like they're cash poor. Some of them have billions of dollars just lying around, and they don't want to spend because they view this team as an investment that they're going to turn over, a few years from now and move on to the next thing. And it shouldn't be like that, Yeah,
at the end of the day, Silex is absolutely right. If you are purchasing any Major League Baseball franchise, your goal should not be for this to be an investment for you to, stick some of the money you make off that team in your pocket. I mean, obviously it happens. You should still want to make money, but you know what really helps you make money? If you're a small market team, you know what's going to put butts in your seats? If you're the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Tampa Bay Rays, winning baseball games. And I mean, you can still maximize the amount that you can do while you have young talent under control without spending like the Yankees or the Dodgers. And I mean, it is just really disgusting to see the way these owners just don't care in small market teams with some pretty diehard fan bases, fan bases that would be spending money to go park, watch the game, buy beer, buy hot dogs, if there was a product on the field worth watching.
I mean, again, I'm in the Cincinnati area, so right now, every year, opening day, it gets ridiculous, right? They had opening day here. It was standing room only. The tickets to get standing room only were still $100. The money's here, but then again, they're looking at it from their standpoint of, well, if he's got 3 to 4 times the amount of money to spend per player than we do, it makes things really hard to field a team. And it's not like they're cash poor. I mean, it is the Reds. Again, the problem that I have without the salary cap is that it's the Yankees will always outspend everybody. And there will be a couple of top players. And then to me, that's not a major league. That's three teams at the top of the league, and the rest of them are all feeder programs. And that's part of the problem I've got with baseball. I mean, I got lots of problems with baseball. I mean, that's clear. There's literally a whole podcast about me complaining about my problems with baseball. But the fact that you don't have an even playing field to where a team from Cleveland could potentially compete with a team from New York. And in fact, New York teams are so normally terribly mismanaged that when they're put on a equal playing field, this is mostly in just all sports. When they're put into an equal playing field, they always come up short. and that's fine. But in baseball, they get to use their one superpower, which is they have deep checkbooks, and it's like, come on, that's ridiculous. No, we don't. Nobody wants to see you buy a World Series. No one has any interest in that. And as for the casual fan, when it was like what 7 or 8 times in a row that the stupid Yankees went off to the World Series, like everybody hated that. What caused that to happen? They just were able to just buy it. It'd be like if every year it was Duke and UK in the championship game every year, because they could just spin their way to the top.
I mean, it's not that every year though. I mean, the Yankees hadn't been in the World Series since 2009 before last season. Dodgers
And it was
hadn't been
great.
there. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, but if you want to talk about parity, the baseball hasn't had a repeat champion since the late 90s. How many other sports can say that? And it's not
No.
just, like, oh, okay, the Yankees and Dodgers and Red Sox are just alternating wins. You've had teams that are, by some definition or other, a small market team win championships. The Cardinals have won multiple times. The White Sox have won. The Royals have won. Yes, at the end of the day, the Yankees and Dodgers and Mets are always going to be spending more than other teams. And being in a big market like that helps. Being one of the more popular IPs in baseball helps. But at the end of the day, if there are owners that if they spend 5-10% more on the team, it's not going to really hurt them too much financially in the immediate future, and in the long run, fans are going to care. Fans are going to show up and watch games because there's a team worth watching. And at the end of the day, they're going to make a lot more money than they would if they just sat idly by, fielded a bare bones team and barely sell out 50% of your stadium.
Yeah, but again, a floor doesn't fix the other problem. And so you've got, yeah, okay, great. So now we're forcing these teams to spend a little bit more money. How much of a guarantee that is that the product they're putting on the field is going to change, as opposed to, oh, great, now New York has to spend more because they still really want that guy, and this guy's willing to give him an extra $5 million to stay in Cleveland, but New York really wants him, so they're going to have to now spend $6 million.
Yeah, I mean, a traditional salary cap is never going to be the answer. If you want to talk about a
100%
more
fix it.
aggressive, well, it's never going to happen. That's the problem. The players' union is never going to agree to that. It's just not going to happen. Like I said, the last time it was brought up, we had the longest labor dispute in baseball history. The World Series was canceled for the first time in 90 years. If you want to talk a more maybe aggressive form of revenue sharing, something a little more in line with what the NFL does, I think that would be a better talking point. But, would the salary cap help? Sure. It's just never going to happen.
I mean, I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of, you know what? If I understand that you're saying, oh, the players' union is going to be the ones that block that and they keep that from ever happening. Well, that's a failure on their part to negotiate. And then our response, because keep in mind, these negotiations aren't just between the player base and the owners, but there's also a third participant in these, and that's the fans. And if one side or the other is willing to destroy the sport or keep the sport, I won't say destroyed, but unfair, maybe the rest of us just stop watching baseball for a while. And that might get somebody's, attention, because, hey, if nobody's watching baseball, there's no money in baseball. And if there's no money in baseball, those caps don't matter. And eventually somebody's going to sit down and be like, look, we got to make things fair. But that would be the way that I would approach it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing my part.
I mean,
I don't watch baseball, so.
Well, we can agree to disagree over whether or not you should watch baseball. But, I think, a revenue sharing plan would be the most likely idea, more aggressive one, where, every X amount over, if you're making $400 million or more of revenue, which there were only about 10 teams that did that last season. A percentage of that or any amount over that is going to be redistributed to teams that had under a certain amount of revenue. That would be the more likely way to level the playing field.
Also, a little bit of input I have on this is that, I mean, the salary cap, it could help. And I see where E's coming from, but like also if you think about it, like the in baseball, I feel like you're more likely to pick up a player who seems to be like really good, demanding a lot of money, and then just becomes a total bust. I feel like that's more likely to happen in baseball, and that's the reason why. I mean, like the Yankees haven't appeared in the world, even though they have a lot of money. The reason why they haven't appeared in the World Series in such a long time, um, you know, either it being like they're not picking up enough good players, or picking up players that just become complete bust until now.
Well, no, because the point is that if the Yankees were properly managed, they'd be in the World Series every year. They just happen to not be. And okay, but you can't use that as the excuse of the other side of the coin because, hey, again, if they were properly managed every year, they would be in the World Series every year. It's like looking back at like the NBA when Mike was around, when Michael Jordan was around, and there was a stint where nobody could do anything because it was Michael Jordan the whole time.
Minus those 2 years he quote unquote retired to
He
play
went and played.
baseball.
Yeah, he played baseball and golf.
Yeah, retired. But no, I get what you're saying with that example.
Like you have to have there's a term in fish keeping called a dither fish. You've got to have something that keeps constantly going around and stirring things up because otherwise things get stale. Okay? And that's what you need. You need to have something to where, okay, you don't want to have somebody locked into a 10-year contract. Now, maybe your team locks somebody into a 10-year contract and you're ecstatic. But also, there's a ton of other guys that are locked into these like super long contracts that you'll never get a chance at because of the way that it's currently structured. I mean, the NFL, that's the one part that they do right. I mean, yeah, it sucks that your favorite player has to leave. So far, mine haven't. But like, it will eventually happen where someone's going to have to make the decision because of the way the cap situation works. That like it sucks to lose your favorite player, but this is for the good benefit of the league. That your favorite player has to go play for a different team. And you don't get that with this cap thing because if it's still your favorite player, he's going to stay there forever as long as owner's willing to write him the contract. That's the part that makes parity so important in the NFL side of things. I mean, that's what enables all of that.
It does, but again, as I said earlier, just because they're out there spending loads of money, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio of, oh, this team's going to be good. Again, injuries happen, unforeseen things happen. Players don't develop correctly. They don't live up to their expectations.
But you still end up with a stacked deck. Like that's the whole point.
But it's not. Go ahead.
I'm trying to think what I gotta say here. The 2019 Washington Nationals. I think of them, right? So like nobody, and like they hardly did anything on the off season that year. They were a complete bust that year. Like they did nothing, and like they were the team that ended up coming out on top in the end. So like I hope this kind of makes sense. Like
I understand what you're saying.
They were a team that weren't like the Yankees and like had like a huge.
You're kind of wrong. We were a top 3 payroll that year. We were in the top 5 of payroll that year when we won it all. And we added Patrick Corbin that off season, over $150 million deal that off season.
Okay, well, my bad. I stand corrected, but still, I
think it's
mean,
good.
I it still kind of proves where, like, teams that have done awful, even if they spend a lot or,
Well, they did spend a lot, and they still won the they still did well. I mean, that's when as soon as they decide to turn the taps on. I mean, the whole point I'm getting at. Okay, so it's like watching Formula One.
Teams that spend well do well.
Well,
Teams that spend a lot do well. That's just how it works.
All right, real quick. I think a good comparison would not be the Nationals. It would be the Tampa Bay Rays,
Yeah.
especially the first time they went to the World Series with Evan Longoria. I think David Price was on that team as well.
Yep. That's exactly what I was thinking about.
They did not, because they're a small market team, but that's a good example. They didn't win, but they still went there. The A's of the 70s, Moneyball, another good example. Probably getting the years wrong, but it's there. It's just not.
Moneyball was definitely more the early 2000s A's, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. But it's like, it's there, but I get what you're saying, Red. It's the teams that do spin tend to, be there. It's not a perfect 1-to-1 ratio because a lot of things have to happen perfectly, but it's a thing that baseball has to grapple with because
Yeah.
I do think
Yeah, go ahead.
that
Go ahead.
I honestly do think, and I'm all for people getting that bag, but paying someone $700 million to play baseball is kind of absurd. But those are the contracts you're seeing in baseball. Part of that is because there's no salary cap, and if I'm a player, I wouldn't want a salary cap either. I'd want to maximize my contract. You kidding me?
Yeah, but the thing is that ends up being detrimental to the sport, and that's where my whole point is. I mean, you think about car racing, okay? Because it's more of a better analogy for baseball. So if I got Formula One, and I've got teams that can spend $1 bazillion to develop the fastest car in the world, and I show up, and I've got a modified Volkswagen Beetle. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna beat me, and they're gonna beat the snot out of me. Yeah, they may do something stupid, mismanage their lap time, or maybe I've got an extra gallon of gas hiding away somewhere. There could be some other thing that I could end up doing that would pull an upset on a race. Herbie the Love Bug style. But for all intents and purposes, the rules are in place so that all the equipment is close to being exactly the same as possible, so it just ends up being a skill issue. And I know people don't like to think about baseball players as being parts of the equipment, but that's what it is as far as sports goes. So if everybody had the same playing field in terms of cash, and they're all starting closer to the same equipment base, and then it's a driver and a manager issue. So then it becomes a coaching and it becomes a front office competition. And I understand, Drewski, that I think you're in a big market team, so telling you that you can't spend ridiculous amounts of money on players probably hurts. But in markets where, I mean, even Kansas City, everything's cheap out there. And there's a reason why I don't spend a lot of money on baseball, because there's not a lot of money going around out there. There's not a lot of money moving hands. So, it's one of the, it's like, for this league, plus you even things out, a player making $20 million a year, or $40 million a year, or heck, in some of these cases, $100 million a year. They're not going to see much of a difference in a cost of living situation in Kansas versus New York. So even if there's a $20 million difference there, however, they're after that bag, and I get it. And the only way to fix that is to say, look, things are getting ridiculous, and you guys want to make a better product. Things should be more exciting. I should be interested every year in my local baseball team because there's a possibility that they end up being good. I mean, there are fans that show up every year for Browns games. Every year. Nobody knows why, but they do. And the reason why is because you have hope every year because you're on an even playing field and football happens. That should be how it is with baseball. And yeah, early on, it's like that in a couple of games. But like, I can have hope all the way through the whole season because there's not such a massive disparity between my team and every other team on the playing field. And you don't have that with baseball. There are teams that hardly ever crack 500. And while it's easy to say, well, they didn't spend enough money, but the point is, why would you invest money if there's no max on there to keep somebody from basically buying your entire team up for 3 times what you paid for them? I mean, I understand that they've got money and that they should be investing in their product. I don't disagree. I think there should be a floor, but there should also be a ceiling, and there should be a better way. And if you want that ceiling to be higher, players union, you make the Yankees open up all of their coffers of all that money that they're generating and distribute it with the rest of the league so that they can have a better product on the field and that there's a better experience for everybody outside of the city of New York.
This is going to be a hot take, and what I'm about to say is I don't want people to think I'm endorsing this behavior. But do you know when a lot of people say baseball was actually fun and enjoyable to watch? The steroid era, when not everybody, but a good portion,
A lot of guys.
yeah, were taking, HGH, PEDs, all that, and they were hitting home runs.
Yeah, they were on steroids, but the thing was that it was multiple different teams, and there were a bunch of them competing, and it was a more level playing field because you had more teams to be interested in, and people could go and pick people to watch and to root for, and you had a development that was going on.
Yeah,
that makes things exciting.
Well, I also think part of that's also the MLB doesn't really. I don't think they market their stars really well.
They don't market anything really well.
Like
they're
they've
really
had
bad at marketing.
They've had arguably the best baseball player sitting just idling in, Los Angeles. The L.A. Angels of Anaheim, just sitting there. They don't market him at all. Granted, he's not the kind of star who wants that kind of attention, but I have never seen the MLB market Mike Trout in my entire life. Never seen it. They just don't do it.
Well, as opposed to A-Rod, who was in everyone's face because New York knew what they were doing.
Well, yeah, it was the Yankees. ESPN also, had a hand in that too because they were pushing that. But I do think the MLB bears some kind of, what's the term? They do bear some kind of fault with this, that they just have not really been good at marketing their star players. At least in this era, they haven't. Unless you're really a super diehard baseball fan, or you follow your local sports team, you're not really gonna know. You can walk up to the average person on the street. I don't think many can name 5 baseball players outside of Aaron Judge and Ohtani, and I'm being perfectly honest when I say that.
No, you are 100% right. I guarantee you, because every conversation has, didn't they get that one guy who's supposed to be really good? And it's like nobody ever says that about LeBron James coming into your sports team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the MLB, it's not as bad as say the NHL. I think the NHL is probably the worst at marketing their stars, but
they are. Yeah.
While MLB has been getting better, I still think that's the main gripe a lot of people have when talking about the negatives of MLB is that their stars are not marketed nearly as well as they could be. And not just, established guys like Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani, but, up and coming stars like Ellie De La Cruz of the Reds or Gunnar Henderson of the Orioles. It's just not enough done to showcase their players.
Yeah, and the thing is part of that's also, I know it's going to sound crazy, but it also happens to do with not having a cap. Because the moment they start investing in, like say Silox goes off and plays baseball, okay, becomes
Good job, Silox.
Good job, Silox, and you're a good hitter, and for the most part you got marketable assets that makes you a good poster child for the team. So I'm going to go stick you up on a podium. You're going to be on the box of all the Wheaties that are in the Washington D.C. area. You're going to be talk of the town. Well, now your price for me to resign you has just gone up. because now there's less. There's nothing that's keeping you from going, great, I am the poster child for Washington baseball. Well, my next contract's up, and I guess I'm off to New York because they're going to pay me 3 times whatever you're going to pay me. And so as a result, the owners aren't going to invest in that. As opposed to Mahomes. Mahomes is like, yeah, I mean, you can't really pay me much more. I mean, they should be paying me much more. In fact, there shouldn't be a whole team on it. It should just be Mahomes they're fielding. You shouldn't even get a defensive lineman. That's just because I hate Mahomes. But anyway, they're marketing the
we
snot out
all?
of him because he can't go off and command. I mean, he can command more, but it's not like eye-watering more. And so he's like, no, I'm comfortable here. Everything's fine. My family's here. Things are good. I love the fan base. I like playing football here. You know, that's what allows them to become these big marketable superstars is because their contracts are in such a way, and then their cap hits are in such a way to where unless you are some big underpaid superstar, you're going to be taken care of relative to all the rest of your peers, and it's not going to be anything nuts.
Justin
I'm assuming you meant Justin
Jefferson.
Jefferson.
Jefferson, sorry, I did that twice.
You mixing up like Justin Jefferson and Hakeem Jeffries together and creating Justin Jeffries or something?
Yeah,
Like,
and we're paying way too much money for him.
but no,
JJ.
I kind of see your point to an extent. With
Well, because the
I
thing
just-
is that the owners are not going to do that because all it does is result in the players' union having more power.
well,
Because
I
you're
just-
in the middle of this weird fighting game between them. Like you put a cap in place, then they get to market it because then they're the ones that are ripping the benefit from the marketing because more people are buying their merch while they're under that contract, and they're trying to get as much of that money back.
I just don't think in baseball it's not in the player's best interest to do a cap. They feel that they should be able to make as much money as they want in the free market, and to them, you're telling them, "Hey, this is as much as you can make because there's a cap." I mean, why would anyone go for that? You know, why would just put yourself in their shoes? Okay, say you're Shohei Ohtani, all right? Why would you want to play under a cap system which caps the amount of money you can make? Whereas
No,
under the current system, you can make as much money as you want, theoretically.
No, I
obviously.
understand why the players' union is opposed to it because it's for the best interest of the individual players. It is not, however, in the best interest of the sport, and that's what my argument is. And eventually, this sport is going to die because they have been putting out such a terrible product for so long. There's a reason why ESPN is dropping them, and because ESPN even went to them and said, "We don't make as much money now than we did 5 years ago when we signed this deal, putting your product on our TVs."
Well, I think there are multiple reasons for it. It's not solely just, hey, there's no cap or, the outrageous contracts. Obviously, the RSNs you have, up until recently, thankfully, they've sped the game up. They've sped the games up with the pitch clock. But I think there's multiple reasons why interest has not really been there. I don't know if not having a cap is the end-all be-all that will kill the MLB.
I think a little
Um,
contribution to the interest, falling down a little bit is those classic fans versus the casual fans now. The classic fans always, longed for the pitching duels and all that stuff. And ever since it started shifting towards, the casual fans' needs, all of them classic fans are like, yeah, no, this is boring now. It's like, I miss my pitchers duels. I feel like that has a little bit to contribute as well, seeing how they're switching that up a lot. And that's kind of my problem, a little bit of problem with the torpedo bats.
I don't know, Drewski. What do you think? Do you think I'm like completely wrong on all this stuff? Because I mean, I know you still
I mean-
desperately love the sport, and I played it. So like I played it growing up. And even then, like it was not a very exciting sport, except for when you were actually playing. And there's got to be a way to make that happen. But Am I wrong or what? You go.
I mean, I mean, some of the beauty in baseball is that there's not something constantly happening every 2 seconds, and that one bases loaded at bat that gets the fans on their feet, or the strikeout to kill a rally, or it. Yes, I think to a lot of casual fans, scoring more runs is more exciting, and and maybe that's the way to grow the game. I don't think you're necessarily wrong, but we'll see. I mean, we had the steroid era, we had offense up in that era, and steroids were banned because of the unfair advantage, quote unquote unfair advantage. That they didn't seem to care about when Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire were bringing the sport back from the dead in the late 90s.
Don't remind me of that.
Yeah,
I hate not Manfred, excuse me. The previous idiot there.
D-Lig, yeah.
For his hypocrisy with all that.
Yeah, not wrong. I mean, it wasn't really really even bandied about banning them until the Mitchell report. So, well, only time will tell what direction baseball chooses to go and what direction Manfred wants to take the game, and whatever gets people watching, I'm for. Deep down, I don't really know what that's going to be, but hope somebody at MLB knows, because it's a great sport and I would love for it to thrive.
I mean, like looking at it as the, because again, you're my baseball expert. Like, what else? What would you change outside of making the owners pay a little bit more? Like, do you think the cap would be significantly beneficial to the sport of baseball?
I think beneficial. I don't know necessarily be significantly beneficial. It's just a weird sport. I mean, it's also, I mean, with the way some contracts have to be structured, there's not really a sport. I mean, yeah, NBA has the G League and the NHL has the AHL, but it's not really, it's not like baseball where you have guys that make peanuts, minimum wage in some levels of the minors, before they finally get up and they get the chance to make their money. So, I stick by my point that regardless of how much I think a salary cap will help, I'm not going to get my heart set on it, because it is never going to happen. I mean, even with the strike in the 90s, baseball was probably at its lowest fan interest wise, and people going through the gates, but we still never sniffed having a salary cap in baseball. So it's kind of a moot point. I don't think there's really any point in arguing what good or bad it will do, because we're just never going to get it.
Well, see, that's a defeatist mindset, right? So, like, if you have the chance to like sit there and wave your magic wand, would this make the sport better or worse? If it makes it better, then that's what you do. I mean, these are those like hard decisions that you make to fix things. These are these hypotheticals that you talk about to fix stuff. And we did that all last episode about how to fix college basketball and the problems that were involved there. Giving up and giving up in defeat because, oh well, like that'll just never happen. That's a very baseball fan mindset. It's like, no,
Oh my God.
you can fix it. We can attack it. We can make it better. I promise.
If you hate baseball, why are you critiquing baseball?
Because I
You
want to
don't
make
like
it something I don't hate.
It's not even that boring or bad.
Because
give it
you
a
don't have.
chance.
No,
I
you know
mean,
what happens?
having a salary cap isn't going to make anything less boring, or it's not going to make it more exciting. Would it level the playing field? Possibly. But the casual fan is not going to care about, okay, well, I'm, living here in New York City. I'm a diehard Mets fan, and, oh, but hey, it's going to be really, really great to see the Pittsburgh Pirates be more competitive now.
All right, let me put it this way. All right, so since we're talking baseball, most diehard baseball fans I know when they come in and they talk to you, they don't talk to you about like players or anything specific. They just start running numbers at you. So think about the fact that you have a salary cap to manage. That's a whole nother Excel spreadsheet column that you all get to track. And think about how excited you'll be.
Oh my God. Listen. People tuned in to baseball when they were hitting home runs. They were popping HGH left and right. Let's just keep it a stack. We all know the dirty secret about when baseball was interesting in our lifetimes. I'm not advocating one bit that these players take those substances, but when they were hitting home runs left and right, people watched. So I don't know how you generate home runs if you told them to use aluminum bats or whatever, but you want interest to go to the game and make it interesting again? Make them hit home runs, make offense a thing.
Just allow the teams, the smaller market teams, to be the only ones that are able to use steroids. Like the Yankees and Dodgers are not allowed to have players use them, but O'Neal Cruz of the Pirates wants to juice up, go right ahead.
I don't hate this idea. This would equal the playing field, and you'd also get another Excel spreadsheet column.
Yeah. How many doses did we give Ellie De La Cruz and Bobby Witt Jr. this week?
Well, no, because you get to have like the pre-juice stats versus the post-juice stats. You get to double your Excel spreadsheet. Like, y'all, man, that would put you like guys in hog heaven. And then once they get off the juice, because they got eventually bought out by the Yankees, how far do they decline?
Yeah. Just track their head sizes. I mean, Barry Bonds, man, that don't ever say. I mean, there are people, and deep down, regardless of steroids, I think Barry Bonds is one of the greatest players in baseball history. Him taking steroids to make him stronger and have his career last longer does not change that. There are some people that argue, oh, well, he never failed a test. We all know he was on him. I mean, obvious. your head doesn't grow 5 sizes like that. Like, none of his hats fit anymore, and his biceps were like the size of a small child. Him doing steroids doesn't change the fact that he is still one of the greats and probably on my baseball Mount Rushmore. But let's not be stupid and naive here. Yes, that is an actual take that I've heard before.
Yeah, does not shock me. But as much as people give hate to Barry Bonds, let's be honest, we all tuned in to watch him when he was at bat. Like, America watched that. Pardon my French. America watched that. Like, it just is what it is, Like, I'm pretty sure most people knew he was on something, but didn't care because, oh my gosh, this guy is hitting home runs. That's interesting. Let's watch. So, I don't know. I'm sure there's things the league can do to facilitate more offense because that just seems to interest people nowadays. Big numbers, big offense. So,
Yeah, I mean, I understand why they don't want to be pushing the steroid stuff because, again, there's a lot of kids that watch baseball and they're like, you're setting a bad example for the kids.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
But I'm not a kid, and I'm wanting to watch like grown up man out there playing some sports for my enjoyment while I sit at home and be out of shape on a couch. I still think a salary cap will go a long way to fixing. And then there's other stuff too. I mean, like the pitching clock. What's it set to now, Drewski?
It depends on whether or not someone's on base. I think it's 20 seconds if no one on base is on base, 18 seconds if there is a player on base. Yeah, I mean I know, another one of the rules, and yeah, I'm in agreement with a lot of those. People complain about the game times being shorter, but it's half an hour cut out of guys constantly stepping out of the batting box and adjusting their gloves, or pitchers constantly stepping off the mound to throw over to first or just to reset. And I'm not against the idea of trying to move things along.
It's been a great addition. One of the few good things Manfred has done. And honestly, especially for late night games with children who you don't want staying up until 10, 11 o'clock. It's beneficial for them, you know. So
Yeah.
I think it's been a great addition.
Yeah, one of the less popular ones has been the Ghost Runner. You know, in the regular season, at least in extra innings, both teams start with a player on second base, and you know, while I think you could probably make some tweaks, you know, maybe if you get to the 12th inning and you're still tied, that's when you're bringing the Ghost Runner. I don't think it's as bad a move as a lot of the baseball purists say it is, because you play 162 games in a season. You know, if you got to use 10 pitchers in one game because you're playing to the 23rd inning, you know, it doesn't really benefit anyone. You know, even the fans that are now sitting in a random baseball stadium at 2 o'clock in the morning watching two teams fail to score.
I agree. I mean I agree with the whole pitch clock thing and all that stuff, but I really don't think that that the MLB should over cater too much to the batters though. Because what's going to happen when pitchers eventually only going to have like 8 seconds on the pitching clock, have to pitch immediately, and next thing you know, going to throw their arm out real fast.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a balance, and you know, I'll say I don't. It's never going to be at that point where they're going to risk player safety for it.
Yeah, no, I was
You
just
know, if
making,
they
I was
do,
just making it.
the first guy that throws his arm out is going to be the guy that makes him change it.
I was kind of just making a joke at it, like, you know, just
Oh
like,
yeah.
you know, hypothetically speaking, and all that stuff. But like just overall, just over catering to batters is not, and that's why I'm not a big fan of the torpedo bats, because like I get like we all want to see home runs, but when is that gonna be too much, huh?
Yeah, I'm
Like
with you.
when
There
is
needs
too
to be a
many?
good balance.
Like, okay, 20-6 is ridiculous. I know we've seen that before, but like this is the beginning series of the season, and we just witnessed the Yankees just blow out the Brewers 20-6. And they were the ones with the torpedo bats in a short field. So I mean, I don't have a whole lot of gripes about. I mean, the torpedo bat. I mean, like, I guess so, but like, also at the same time, I feel like it's kind of catering to batters too much. Cause, like, and I know that's kind of like a whole thing where the pitcher can just what you would call get good, but I don't know. I just feel like the torpedo bats kind of catered to batters a little too much, if that makes sense.
Well, it has to be a balance. Otherwise, you wind up like the NBA, where it just seems like it's just offensive production night in and night out. There's no defense. It's just a big focus on 3-pointers and, you know, just score, score, and score. You know, you don't want that in baseball. Because at that point, it kind of just, the pendulum just swings the other way, where it's like, well, this is boring. Why do I want to watch a game where the score is like 19-23? Like, who wants to watch that? I don't, you know?
I mean, that's better than a 1-2.
Not
Oh, come
necessarily.
on.
I mean, like, pitchers do a lot more interesting than what people think, honestly.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, cut it, E. You just
You are
don't
wrong.
understand.
You are what's wrong with society. You know. Ooh, show me show me all the scoring. Now, you know what's so good? When you have pitchers just duel it out for 9 innings. That to me is interesting. As opposed to all these home runs that
Yeah, I
people
mean,
see.
I agree with that.
I don't want
enjoy
home runs.
That's what I'm
watching.
trying to say.
I don't want more home runs either. But what I do want is I want more things happening. And I think like, either make the baseball fields bigger and standardize them so that because like again, my biggest problem with baseball is it's like, oh, there's a pop fly out to like to left field. Every single time the guy's gonna catch it. Like I don't know what the statistics are now of modern baseball. I'd have to go look it up, but I'm sure that there's somebody that's a baseball fan that probably has this in an Excel spreadsheet somewhere of the the percentages of pop flies that are caught now versus pop flies that were caught 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And I bet you had more of a chance of getting on base back then. It's not like the size of baseball fields have gotten bigger to account for the players getting faster. It's just something to point out. Anyway, we're like way over time. So as a result of all that, I don't know how much of this will make it out, but hopefully the best parts made it out. In that case, we're hoping that you're going to like, comment, and subscribe on us because we'd love to have you. And if you're following us on, if you're just tuning in to us on Spotify, please give us a follow over there, and we will see you next week. We've got a special surprise for you in 2 weeks, but next week we should be pretty good too. Bye.